once we've done that, the sell as to these amazing jobs that are endlessly varied and no 2 days that are ever the same is an easy sell, but I need to get them to understand what the sector is. What are the industries? So Royal Navy and Merchant Navy. I've created a careers professionals network, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but one of the questions that I ask them is, what's the difference between the Royal Navy and the Merchant Navy? It won't surprise you that over 80% of them can't tell me, which it was shocking to me, but not shocking. It's probably not shocking to you. Boat building and naval architecture. We know there is a real shortage of people going to study to be naval architects, and that can be a really rewarding career. And what I'm trying to do is getting the word out into schools and colleges with the work that I'm doing through the careers program, so that when a careers advisor is sitting in front of someone who's talking about wanting a career in design or in a creative career, or even someone who wants to learn a trade, say they want to be a carpenter, that careers advisor will say to that carpenter, okay, well, how far have you got thinking about that? Are you telling me you want to be a kitchen fitter, or you want to be a cabinet maker? Do you want to work on a building site? You want to do first fits of houses, that sort of thing? Or have you thought about boat building? And I think if we can get to that place, we will have moved this whole question, you know, further down the line. Likewise, I'm doing a piece of work currently talking to it's a Facebook group actually, but it's for A-level law tutors. And I'm trying to get them to be thinking, when they talk about, you know, conveyancing and family law and company business law and all the rest of it, that they think about maritime law. So that, not because every person who's going to study law either will want to be a maritime lawyer or could be, because there aren't, you know, millions or hundreds of thousands of vacancies, but just when those key influencers are having that first conversation, that maritime gets shoved in. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to do. So sea fishing and aquaculture falls into the maritime sector as well, not the actual fishing part, but the businesses and the boats and where they're kept overnight and who services them and repairs them and all that sort of stuff is obviously included. Marine science and aquaculture is as well, though, and I've done a little bit of work on developing some resources supporting the question, you know, so you want to be a marine biologist, that's great, but how do you actually turn that into a job? If I had £1 for every time I'd been to a careers fair in my sort of previous life when I was working at Eastleigh College and spoken to young people who say, oh, I want to be a marine biologist. You know, it's a really kind of on trend thing that people say. But if your retort is, how are you going to do that then? How are you actually going to find a job? They don't know where to go with it. It's just an exciting sounding job description. So I've got some resources that support that, and also careers in conservation, aquaculture and conservation. Super yachts is a really interesting one, because you say super yachts to any young person and they'll tell you Roman Abramovich, I can't pronounce it, you know who I'm talking about, and other super rich people. Actually, I'm in the process of developing a webinar for, it's probably going to be for Eastleigh College just in the first instance, because that's where I used to work and I've got contacts there. But they have catering and hospitality courses, they do marketing and events management, and they do public services. And we're going to develop a webinar for those young people to talk to them about cadetships and careers on super yachts. And I've got a fantastic ambassador, young lady who has done a cadetship and completed, and has worked on commercial shipping and on yachts and super yachts. She's going to come and talk as well. And then I've got a lady called Jenny Matthews, who you may or may not have heard of, but she's one of the co-founders of She of the Sea, which you might like to look up, which is an organisation that's campaigning for better diversity in yacht crewing. So hopefully that's a way of getting that information into a college. We'll record it and we'll make it a resource that's then available on the website for other people to look at. Of course, I wish I'd known about super yachts, and my career might have gone in a different direction back then, but no one told me about that when I was at school. Ports, harbours and marinas. It's a really interesting one. I mean, I'll come back to what I said earlier about, you know, you grow up and you've got a port on your doorstep, but you don't think about it as a place where you might build a career. And actually, I would link this to business services, which is at the bottom on the right-hand side. Portsmouth International Port employs 3,500 people on permanent contracts. It's like a small town. And I've got a terrific video on the website, which is exploring Portsmouth International Port. It's about 20 minutes long. They break it down into different business functions and different job titles in each of them. Because whilst if I was to stand up in front of a group of 15-year-olds now and ask them to tell me about the jobs at a port, they're going to say, well, you could be a captain of a ship. You could be working on the quay side or the dock side. Oh, you might be in one of those cranes. And then it will stop. And that's about as far as it goes. But of course, we've got people that work in logistics. We've got people that are doing the shipbroking. We've got the finance people. We've got the marketing and PR people. We've got HR teams. We've got the catering teams that feed 3,500 people. We've got the security team, and so on and so on and so on. And it's a super little video that we've got that anyone can have a look at, and you can direct young people to, that starts to break down those barriers. Cruise obviously is part of sort of catering, hospitality, tourism and all the rest of it, but the hardware, if you like, the boats and everything around them is clearly part of the maritime sector, and aren't they having a terrible time at the moment? The cruise sector will bounce back, and they are talking about cruises. My mum and dad cruise quite a bit, as lots of people of my ages, mum and dads cruise quite a bit. And they've had stuff through from Saga, and they've had stuff through from someone else. She was only telling me last week about them talking about cruises being open in the UK from May, June time. They're talking about doing, one of the ones that she'd seen was a sort of round the UK cruise. And actually, you don't get off the cruise ship. You don't dock into Liverpool and then have a day in Liverpool and get back on. You are always on the boat. But they are looking at ways of making that possible. Leisure boating, super yachts, I've talked about that already, but the huge industry that's around leisure boating. I mean, all the little businesses that exist in a harbour, you know, it's massive, but people don't think about it. And actually, neither did I. And I'm learning so much about the sector, and clearly I'm passionate about it, and I get very excitable. But my partner and I had a day on Brownsea Island in August between the lockdowns, and it was a glorious day. And from the south side of Brownsea Island, sadly, you could see 3 cruise ships in the distance that were moored up, because obviously they're keeping them all down that part of the channel. But when we got back to Poole Harbour, and we went and got an ice cream, and we sat and just watched the world go by and listened to the people singing sea shanties that were dressed up as pirates and all the rest of it. I noticed all the people that were wandering around with the Poole Harbour, I can't remember if it was Limited Authority, one of you might know, but anyway, the Poole Harbour staff in their dark blue polo shirts, how many of them were wandering around, and how they were coming out of this office and then they were going down the boardwalk to get to the yachts as people were bringing their boats in. Presumably they were booking in overnight stays or whatever, and the industry that was around it. Now, I love Brownsea Island. I have been there, I don't know, a dozen times, possibly more. I have never noticed the harbour staff before, and it's not until you draw it to someone's attention that you see it. But anyway, so that's Ports, Harbours and Marinas. The Merchant Navy, the Royal Navy, I don't need to tell you guys what that is, but I'm doing a lot of work to try and help young people understand that. And of course, the whole history and the story about why they're called the Merchant Navy and where that came from, and how that was a royal gift, recognizing the commitment that seafarers make and the contribution that they make is really interesting to young people, I have discovered. Engineering won't surprise any of you, and boat building, shipbuilding and all the rest of it. Engineering and how it's linked to the defence sector is obviously really big for us. BAE, Babcock, Kinetic, etc., etc. Actually, what's interesting perhaps to you guys is that I'm working with Engineering UK on a partnership agreement between the two of us so that we can work together to promote engineering careers in maritime. And Engineering UK have been going a lot longer than Maritime UK, which was, I didn't tell you, was developed out of the back of the 2050 strategy. And the Maritime UK sounds massive. There are 6 of us, that's all. We're not a massive organisation. We have a national council, which is a bit like a board of a private company, but there's only 6 individuals. Inland waterways, I hadn't realised that was part of the maritime sector, but it is, and young people find that interesting. On the website, I've got a couple of virtual tours inside canal boats, and for young people that have never seen in a canal boat, it's actually really interesting. It's a bit like what's it called? Google Maps, where you can do the 360 turning around rather than a tour around the canal boat. But if you're a young person that's grown up in a city where there isn't a canal, or you've grown up in a city or a town where there is a canal, but you've not been lucky enough to be on a canal boat, it just opens their eyes. Work boats and tugs are my personal favourite. I've got a real soft spot for tugs, and I was told a couple of weeks ago that the average length of a tug is 3 meters shorter than Big Ben is tall. So there you are, I'll just leave you with that one. So they're not as little as you think. That's the average. There are littler ones for littler harbours, but that's the average. So, and that is a really good thing to share with young people, because exactly as you guys have just gone, you go, whoa, but Big Ben's really big. But when you think of, you know, being in Portsmouth Harbour and seeing the Queen Elizabeth coming in, and how massive that is, you know, the tugs look about that size, don't they? But they're my personal favourite. So, and the Workboat Association has actually just joined Maritime UK as a national council partner. So we'll be doing a lot more work with them. The other thing that the Department for Transport said to us is, you guys are impossible to talk to. You know, regionally, maritime businesses don't talk to each other well. Nationally, it's even worse. If we want to talk to the sector, we have to have the same conversation with 15 different meetings. And it's out of that Maritime UK was born. It's out of the People Roadmap document that the requirement for a programme manager for careers and outreach and a coordinated and robust careers programme was required, and that's where my job came from. So I'm happy about that, obviously. So what do we tell young people about the maritime sector? National average wage in the UK at the moment is £29,000. In the maritime sector, it's 38, so it's well paid. There's loads of ways to come into it: apprenticeship, cadetship, degree programmes, full-time jobs. Maritime sector businesses are involved in kickstart schemes, which you may or may not have heard of, and that's a kind of a traineeship, pre-apprenticeship program for young people that are over 19 and who are on universal credit, but a way to get them into the sector. So it's all sorts of different ways that you can do that. The green revolution stuff. So before Christmas, the Prime Minister talked about the 10-point green industrial revolution, 10-point plan for the green industrial revolution. That is wrapped up in the decarbonisation stuff. And the whole sector has been charged with being carbon net zero by 2050. And that is no small thing. That's massive. You know, think back to when you were young and you drew a picture of a cargo ship or a cruise ship. We always drew the black smoke coming out of the chimneys on the top of it. Well, I say I always did. I imagine many of you did too. Now, what's really interesting, I had a meeting this week with an organisation called Artemis Technologies. Now, you'll know about Artemis and the Artemis racing team. Artemis Technologies are based in Belfast, and they are developing water taxis and ferries that are emission-free. And if you haven't looked it up, look up Artemis Technologies on the internet. They are developing vessels that fly on top of the water, essentially, on foils. incredible development, but that's kind of where the sector is going. We also need to digitalize the sector. We also need to, so there's a whole fuel question and the alternative fuels. They're supporting wind and wave power development, you know, in order to meet the government's targets for wind power generation. You know, our Prime Minister, God love him, he makes all sorts of bold statements, but he talked about 10 years time before Christmas, in the last quarter of last year, he talked about a massive target, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but a massive target for wind power supply in 10 years. Well, having spoken to Hull University after that came out, and Hull University have lots of programs that support wind power generation skills development. They told me there's, you know, they need 22,000 extra technicians and engineers to meet the government's targets. That's not a small thing. That's massive. So we know, we've been talking to young people for years about STEM subjects and engineering and all the rest of it, but this is real. So if you've got a young person who's passionate about the environment and passionate about making a difference and interested in the maritime sector and is happiest when they're on the water, let's talk to them about whether or not they could be looking to being an engineer supporting wind power. You know, it's a no-brainer. And I've said to you already about the sector doubling in size in 10 years. I looked at this a few weeks ago and I thought, oh my God, I've been telling people it's 10 years. It's 2050. And I went back and checked with my boss. It's not. It is 2030. It is 10 years. And that's even with the pandemic. They still think that's achievable. Lots of ways for young people to come into the maritime sector and to have their training funded. Again, cadetships, apprenticeships, and so on. These Kickstart programs that I'm telling you about. There's something else that I'm working with at the moment with Fareham College, which I'll tell you about, just so you know, but they are looking at developing what they're calling a skills boot camp. And it's for unemployed adults who've lost their job as a result of the pandemic, and perhaps we're in a different industry and want to come into the maritime industry, but haven't got a Scooby about the industry. Therefore, despite the fact that perhaps they were a middle manager in a hospitality and catering environment and have got a lot of transferable skills, they can't get shortlisted on interviews for a maritime business. And Fareham College are currently putting together a bid for the Department for Education to run this to help local unemployed adults in the Solent, you know, get that extra leg up and that extra help, at least to get to interview. I mean, obviously we hope that they'll get jobs as well, but at least to get to interview. And then we talk about a role for everyone: careers at sea, ashore, chance to see the world, and wide varying careers, pathways and entry routes. The funny thing is, I have two children myself. My eldest is a police officer, he's 25. My youngest is 21. Since I've been doing this job, I've been saying to him, Rossi, you need to be looking at this. This would be the most amazing life for you. You would love a cadetship and all the rest of it. I so wish I'd known about this before. So what's the programme doing? You'll be sent a version of this PowerPoint afterwards, so you'll be able to have a look at the links. We've got a good careers area on the website. It's not great yet, and one of my jobs for early this year is to refresh the careers area. I've got resources on there. I've got information activities. The graphic on the right is what you see when you go on to the information activities page. They are longer videos. That's where I said to you earlier, finding a career in conservation. The one underneath it with a scuba diver is the marine biology one, for example. And that's a super film. That's actually interviewing 3 alumni from Bangor University, who 2 of them did marine biology and 1 did natural sciences. And it's talking to them about what jobs they're doing now. There's one lad who's running a wild salmon farm off of Oban, west coast of Scotland. There's a young lady called Star who's now working, if it's not a sea life centre, it's at an aquarium in Weymouth. You might know whether it's actually a sea life centre, but she's an educator there. She's got there via working with sharks in California. But she's very happy to be back in Dorset now. And then there's a third young lady who's actually German, but is now currently working, doing a PhD with Oregon University, but working in Greenland, studying the melting of icebergs and the impact that that's having on the sea. So really interesting. That's what I mean. If someone says, I want to be a marine biologist, direct them to that film, because it gives them that bit of information about how it's possible to turn that desire into a job. There are also other films on shipbroking, on the careers at sea, on greener yachting, on navigation-based careers. There's a bit about Trinity House, and and what was the other one I was going to tell you? It's gone out of my head. Anyway, there's about 13 or 14 of them there. We also gathered a number of virtual tours, and this was in support of Maritime UK Week, which is a biannual event. It was in October last year. I've got, again, 13 or 14 of them. They're little short clips. My favourite one is the one that the Royal Navy did for me, which is a bit like a TikTok video inside HMS. Oh, I can't remember its name. HMS, can't remember its name. Anyway, it's one of the ice supply ships that goes down to the Antarctic, the red and white. It will come to me this afternoon, it'll pop into my head. But anyway, and it's amazing. And they go around, they're up on the bridge, they go into the engine room, you go into the galley, and the chefs and so on say, this is the most important part of the ship, because if you don't feed people properly, they don't work properly. And then you go and meet the PT instructor, and he says, this is the most important part of the ship, and so on. So it's really good, and it's only about 4 minutes long. It's awesome. Is it HMS? No, it's not HMS.
Endurance.
Endurance, that's the one. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. There's also a very short video showing Endurance in dry dock and the water coming back in. But we've also got port, we've got the canal boats and so on. Those short videos in the first 12 weeks that they were available online were viewed 4,500 times. So that's proof that people are finding them useful.
Actually,
so
I think HMS Protector, Endurance was the previous one.
It is Protector, yeah. It's on the website. It's the red and white one anyway, is what I can tell you. So I wanted to talk to you about the Careers Professionals Network. It's clearly a passion of mine to stop this nonsense about schools and colleges not knowing about the maritime sector. I have created a Careers Professionals Network, and I have about 260 careers advisors in it already. I did an article for the CDI's magazine, and that's the Career Development Institute. That's where you get your qualifications from if you're a careers advisor. They have a circulation of 4,750. I am trying to macro the impact that I have, but I also do work with individual schools and colleges if they ask me to. I do newsletters to careers advisors and so on. What you have to think about is the number of, you know, if I talk to you about the breadth of the sector, and then you think about how many young people that you talk to, we are multiplying the potential for that information to be shared by 20 people, 40 people, 100 people. I don't know how many young people you work with. A careers advisor, there is one careers advisor at Eastleigh College, and she's got 1,300 young people. But because she's a pal of mine, she used to work for me, I'm sending her maritime information constantly, and she's including it in her program. And actually, we're going to start doing some events there. And then you see how just raising that profile is happening. It does feel like pushing a boulder uphill, but I am trying to break that down. The other thing we do is we run an ambassadors network, and you guys might be able to help me with this. At the moment, I've got 87, I think, maritime ambassadors. The best way to describe how this works, if you'll forgive the analogy, is it's a bit like an online dating site, in that schools and colleges register to the site. It's called Inspiring the Future, and then they request an industry ambassador to support a particular event. Now, it could be when life gets back to normal, and when all the cruise ships are no longer in Weymouth Bay, they might be asking people to go and have a stand at a careers fair, or to go in and do mock interviews or to be a speaker at an assembly or so on. At the moment, these things are all virtual. Ambassadors are volunteers. There is a Careers at Sea Ambassadors Network already that's run by Inspiring the Future, but this is about the wider sector. So I need to make sure that I've got engineers, that I've got naval architects, that I've got boat builders, that I've got people that are involved in training, that I cover the industry, all the industries rather. But if you're interested in doing that, all they ask you for is a commitment of a minimum of an hour a year. I've done a couple of events for them. I've signed up as an ambassador myself. The first one I did was for a primary school in Bradford. I thought it was 3 classes we were talking to. It was 3 years that each had 3 classes. So it was 280 children. And it was like, what's my line? If you're the older people that are listening and have occasionally listened to Radio 4 will know what I'm talking about. But basically they have to guess what your job is, and they're only allowed to ask questions and the answers have to be yes or no. And they're given a fixed number of questions. And we had someone from offshore power, with someone from the NHS, and there was me from the maritime sector, obviously as a careers person. And someone put are you a program manager? And I thought, yeah, you get all the points for initiative, because there is no way you've picked that up from what I've said. You're obviously looking at Google at the same time, which is no problem. You know, that's a softer skill, and I appreciate initiative. So they might ask you to be an ambassador to talk about the maritime sector. And what people worry about is, but I don't know anything about what happens in a port, or I don't know anything about naval architecture. What generally we ask people to do is to share their own career story, talk about why they're passionate about the maritime sector and what their life has been and what their work has been. And if someone asks you a tricky question like, how many years does it take to become a maritime lawyer? The answer is, do you know what? That's a fantastic question. I don't know the answer to that, but I will get it back to your teacher. And then we pick that up again offline, and I take that opportunity. If that's something that any of you would like to do, you would be welcomed with open arms. There's lots of support available. We do an onboarding webinar where we talk to you about it. We do another one where we talk to you about using Zoom or Teams or whatever. And you are supported in that journey. But I can't tell you how much fun it is. We did one at Wyvern College this week where I had 5 ambassadors. One is crew on a Stena ferry, management level crew, but in sort of catering, hospitality, and the shops on board. He was amazing, so engaging. A lady that runs her own marketing and PR business but supports maritime businesses. A lady who I might have said this already, or I might have said it to somebody else. Forgive me if I'm going over the same stuff. 3 meetings like this today. Runs her own canal boatyard and a marina. A chap who's a shipbroker, and a guy who works for Lloyd's Register as a surveyor. And they each spoke about their own careers story, which was amazing. There was 218 children in it, and they were asking questions sort of in the chat, if you like. They all wanted to know how much these people got paid. And the first one that they asked that to was the shipbroker, which I thought was quite funny, because, you know, it's likely that there were several zeros on the number, but he didn't say that. What he talked about, he answered it brilliantly, and what he said was, well, if you come in as a graduate, or if you come in as a, you know, as a entry level, it would be X, and you're paid on commission. And then he talked to them about what commission means. So kids are really interested in finding out. That's labour market information, but we support you in that. So if you're interested in being an ambassador, I would welcome you with open arms. So you could be an ambassador. You could refer individuals to the Maritime UK website, or to me directly. You could share links for the website, and you could, if you're on social media, please look me up on Twitter or on LinkedIn. It's just Lorna Wagner. I think they're on the next slide actually, and you will get this, or send me an email and I'll see what I can do to help. And those are my contact details. Now I've got a video that I would like to share with you, and I think we've still got time because it's only about 4 minutes long. And then I'm finished doing all the chatting, and it's over to you guys for any questions that you might have.
Some of my friends work in 9-to-5 offices, which isn't the lifestyle for me. I don't want to be sat down at a computer desk. I want to be out there hands-on, learning different skills every single day.
Whenever I speak to people about this job, they always say, I'd never speak about my job like that. You must really enjoy what you do. Yeah, it makes you realise what you're involved with when you speak to other people who are sort of like stuck at the desk.
Kieran Martin, 19 and marine technician. So I was working in a pub before. I didn't really want to do it for the rest of my life, cleaning up dishes. I met someone from here and they said, look, there's a marine engineer apprenticeship going. So I got interested, went for the interview, and luckily here I am today. I've been on the likes of ST Victoria and aircraft carriers that have just been brought in. I've done jobs, loads of different experiences that you won't get anywhere else.
A career in maritime can take you internationally. We deliver services to the Royal Navy, so we support movements in and out of the 3 ports in Portsmouth, in Devonport and Clyde. I've been linking up quite heavily with local schools to make sure we've got amazing careers for people coming into the maritime space, which is one of the most exciting places to come and work. Certainly I really want to shout about and want to make sure that other people get to know about.
I'm Tom Courtier, I am 28 years old and I'm a mechanical engineer at Kinetic. My role here is very varied. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, but I also do a lot of scuba diving here. I'm involved with a lot of hands-on work with the tools, underwater and above water, and also do a lot of design work. From university, I was applying for jobs, and like anyone else, I put in tens and tens of applications. Kinetic was actually the first company that came back to me, and they offered me the job the next day. Being really keen, I took it straight off their hand.
It's great having the youth coming through. For a young person thinking about a career in maritime engineering particularly, there's a couple of main routes. It covers a wide range of abilities and interests. I started work when I was 17. I applied for an apprenticeship through the Ministry of Defence. I've been here 41 years today. Some people would say, how can you maintain that interest for that long? I think the variety of work in Kinetic is such that how can you fail not to be interested?
Maritime is an exciting option for young people. You could be the captain of one of the biggest vessels on the water. You could be designing a new super yacht. You could even be someone who's going to unlock new technologies to help our oceans. It is an industry which needs to draw on the talent that we have today to help us shape the industry for tomorrow.
It's a no-brainer to have one of the leading maritime education centres at the hub of maritime activity in the United Kingdom. At Solent, we have a one-stop shop for maritime education. We have one of the best simulation centres in the world, and in addition to that, we have state-of-the-art classroom facilities for all our students. In today's day and time, you need cutting-edge technology to cope with the latest that's out over there. It is an industry that offers equal opportunities. So if you have a dream, then the industry is awaiting you, and we will welcome you aboard straight away.
My first aid, my firefighting, my sea survival, all of them qualifications used within everyday life. Age of 16, I've been given them opportunities and taken them on board, and it's definitely set me for life.
I wouldn't be doing certain things without being here at the job. I mean, especially with the scuba diving, I probably wouldn't be a diver without coming here. And to know that the work we do is contributing to lives at sea is very beneficial. We touch on a lot of things, but it's barely a tip of the iceberg in the maritime industry.
So, and that's kind of the end of my presentation. That's one of 3 careers videos that we've created. That one is for the Solent. We've also created one in the Liverpool district, and we've done one for the Southwest, and they are all available on the website. They complement each other, so it's not all the same jobs, it's different ones. I hope that was useful, and I hope to come across you all again sometime in the future.
Thank you, Lorna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorna.
Thank you,
very
much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.